Welcome back everyone. Today we are doing a comprehensive review of the Fuji X500 speedlight. If you want to know everything that comes in the box, make sure to check out my unboxing video here. I did have a friend who was gracious enough to lend me 3 of these, so real quick I just want to thank Jeffrey Lewis Bennett for letting me borrow these. Real quick, let's talk about the build quality. Just like everything that Fuji makes, it feels extremely well made to last. It's all the same materials that we are used to with the bodies and lenses, a very strong metal housing with some plastic composite on the outside for a really nice tactile feel. This is probably the first serious speedlight that we've had from Fuji for the new X series. It took quite a while for it to come out because they were having a lot of problems with overheating, but those issues have finally been resolved and now it is on sale everywhere. The Fujifilm X500 has pretty standard speedlight features, including 135 degrees of swivel to the left, 180 degrees to the right so that you can turn it completely backwards, as well as 90 degrees of tilt. The Fujifilm X500 has a wide-angle diffuser and bounce guard. Fujifilm finally caught up to a lot of the other flash providers with some of the features of this flash. It does have TTL, it does have high-speed sync, and it does have connectivity between speedlights. Unfortunately, the connectivity between flashes is through line of sight, not onboard radio. It includes a removable top that can be swapped out for the included diffuser cap. The Fujifilm X500 is just a tiny bit smaller than other speedlights in its class. So you can see it's a little bit shorter as well as being more narrow. Picture here is a Zoom lithium-ion R2 TTL from Flashpoint, also known as the Godox V860 version 2. So my first question is, due to the smaller size, I wondered how the power output's going to keep up with something a little bit larger. So I'm going to test that with the meter right now. Now I put the Fuji at 24mm because it is designed for the X series APS-C sensors. You can actually change that within the flash, but it's set up for 24mm, which would equal 35mm. So its angle is actually equal to a 35mm on full frame. Now the Zoom lithium-ion R2, we set that one up at 35, so we had the same spread of light. Otherwise, our results would be inconsistent. The Fuji X500 came in at f16, whereas the Zoom lithium-ion R2 TTL came in at 16.5, so it was a half stop stronger, which means about 50% more light, or it means that the Fuji X500 gives you about 66% of light when everything else is equal. You can assume that the Fujifilm X500 is going to put out about 2/3 of the light that you would get from a speedlight from the big 3. Alright guys, so now that we know the power output, I really want to see how this thing's going to hold up to extended shooting conditions. So what I'm going to do is fire it over and over at full power and see when it starts to slow down, see how that recycle time is, and see when that heat protection kicks in, which is kind of a risky thing to do considering this flash was known to even catch on fire when they were doing initial testing, and that's what delayed it. But we're going to try it anyways because we want to know how this is going to stack up in real world shooting. So after just a few pops, it's taking just about 5 seconds to fully recycle and be ready for another flash. So it has this blinking code, and essentially what it's doing, it's saying it has power to fire, but it's not enough for a full charge. Not until that light comes back on and is completely solid is it ready to fire again, at least at full power. Now we're up to about 6 full seconds of recycle time before it's actually fully ready to fire again at full power. So it is starting to slow down a bit after continued use, but we are really dogging on it at this point. But even after 3 minutes of continually using it as fast as it'll go, we eventually hit it. Now that red screen came on, that's a warning. We're basically in the heat protection and it's not going to fire at full power anymore. So it took firing the flash at full power for over 3 minutes, constantly firing it as soon as it would recycle before that heat protection kicked in. So it's definitely built to fire at full power, as much as it possibly can. Next up, we're going to talk about some of the controls on the body. On the bottom you can see this locking switch, which will lock it firmly to a camera body. It does have this little button along with the thumb dial, so it can turn on by just pushing it down, and it can turn off without pushing it down. But in order to switch between the modes, you actually have to press the button as you turn it. And that's designed so that you can't accidentally flip the camera into remote or master without realizing it. As you can see, we have a test button, a setup button which allows you to go into custom functions, a big dial, center click which essentially acts as an OK button, and then you have 4 buttons to access various controls. To start off here, we are in the manual mode. If I click flash, I can adjust this zoom head, and what this actually is doing here, it's kind of a priority function. So there are 3 stages. There are normal, which will fire the flash at whatever zoom head that you have it set at, or at the auto, where it will actually use the focal length of the lens to determine what zoom head it should fire at. Then you have a little bit narrower of an option, and what that is, it's prioritizing power. So in TTL, it'll actually have the zoom head pushed a little bit more forward so that you get more power output out of the zoom head that you are at. So it's actually a little bit narrower of a beam, but you'll get more output. That's great because if you're bouncing, you don't need as wide of a beam as your focal length. So this gets you a little bit more power that way. And your final option is to prioritize the width of the beam. So this will actually give you an even wider spread than your focal length. Also have control of the zoom head. You can have it be set to manual, go anywhere from 24 to 105, or you can keep it in auto where you can use the focal length of the lens to determine your zoom head. Clicking this button again will let you access the LED. You can turn it on or off. You can also control the LED's power from full power all the way down to 1/128. So that's at 1/128. With the LED, you can also choose how you want it to behave. You can use it to help illuminate as an AF assist lamp. You can use it to just create a catch light in somebody's eyes. You can enable both, or you can turn them both off. You do have to have this checked to AF if you'd like it to come on to help you in dark autofocus situations. In this primary flash menu, you can hit mode, which will activate up here, which you can then use the dial to switch between manual, multi, and TTL. TTL, you can then hit this button for compensation. If we switch back to manual, you just use the plus minus to actually adjust the power output. Interestingly, this flash can go all the way down to 1/512th power, which is extremely low. Most speed lights stop at 1/128th, so this is an extremely low powered flash if you need it to. Next, we're going to flip over to the remote. This is what you want to use if you want the speed light to be triggered off camera by another flash on camera. So here you can select the group that you want this flash to behave in, A, B, or C. You can also adjust compensation here. Otherwise, it'll take whatever you put as the master. It'll take the information from that through the optical signal. You continue, you can change the channel from 1 through 4. Again, you can adjust the zoom head. Otherwise, it'll just keep on the properties that you have with it left in manual. And finally, you can make modifications to the LED as well in this. You'll notice the color switches. Primary mode is green, remote mode is in amber, and then the master mode is green again. And in here you'll be able to adjust the functions. Now this is behaving as if it were on the camera, so it's going to control the off-camera units. So as long as the channel is matched up, you can go through, adjust the groups, change the mode of each group, and whether you want them to be TTL, manual, or multi. Or you can even turn it off. You can adjust TTL by both power and compensation or using ratios. You can also make the master flash change to a different group if you want it to pick up on those properties. Unfortunately, you cannot control the zoom head of the off-camera speedlights using the on-camera speedlight as a master. Now, in addition to having access to all of those controls on the actual speedlight, you're also going to have them within the camera itself. All you have to do is go into the flash menu, go to flash function setting, and you can start playing with the shoe mount flash. You can leave it in manual, switch it to multi using the rear command dial, turn it off, or switch it to TTL. You can then hop over and add compensation or remove it, up to 5 stops of compensation in either direction. You can enable the high speed sync as well as switch it from front to rear curtain. You can also modify that priority from here, even coverage priority, flash power priority, or the standard mode, which is basically just fine-tuning the zoom head. You can choose whatever zoom head you want, leave it in auto. You can also control the functions of the LED. And having these controls within the body is great because it's way easier to access these options with the controls that you're used to, as opposed to on the flash screen, which is kind of cramped and you have to kind of flip through menus a little bit more than you do using the back of the camera. Now if I flip it over to be a master, all of a sudden my master settings are unlocked. We can go back into our flash function settings and have full control of all the off-camera flashes. So you can pick the group, change the modes, as well as all the additional options that you have from the speedlight itself that we already went over. Right now I've got it set to the autofocus mode. As you can see, when it's in a low light, it's actually going to illuminate to try to help with focus. If you want that autofocus assist lamp to work, you're going to have to do two things. One, in your autofocus manual focus settings, you're going to have to go down to autofocus illuminator and make sure that's set to on, which I by default have it set to off so that the illuminator on the body isn't coming on all day. Next, go to your flash settings, go to LED light setting, and make sure that the autofocus assist or AF assist plus catch light is on, whichever you choose. You can also access that function from the body of the flash as shown before. But it won't come on at all if it thinks it can establish focus easily on its own. So it kind of has that pause and senses that you can't actually focus, and then it decides to actually illuminate. I know that the red AF grid that we're used to on other types of speedlights doesn't actually work on this type of sensor technology, which is why they use an LED. But unfortunately the LED just isn't as good as that type of grid, because you're either really distracting having this LED pop up all the time because you see it right on the camera how bright it is, and in a dark room it kind of draws a spotlight of attention right towards you. And really it's nowhere near as powerful either. In a dark room you're still not going to light something very far away using this LED thing to even just to get focus. It's not strong enough of a power. If you're in a really dark environment where you'd actually want to use it, the amount of power that you have to use in order to get it is just going to call so much attention to you that for me it's just not great technology. So unfortunately I think that this LED as an autofocus assist lamp is probably the biggest pitfall of this overall. But it will work relatively well on close subjects, and I do think that it chooses its points of illumination or when it wants to illuminate really well. Here you can see that you can just turn the LED light on and off. And while it's on, I'm going to adjust the power output from full all the way down to 1/128. Lastly, I'm going to quickly go over the custom functions of this flash. You can use the test button to actually test the flash, or you can use it to activate the modeling lamp. Next, with the TTL power, this is basically choosing the power output that your flash is going to test TTL at. So it sends out a specific test power, and then it chooses whether to send out a stronger or lower power based on the information it gets from that test shot. Now I would leave this at 132 because if you're using it at full power, it's going to be testing a full power flash every time you use TTL, which is going to slow you down quite a bit. You can change the scale units from meters to feet. LCD density is basically the contrast on the screen. LCD illumination is how long the screen is going to stay on. You can leave it constantly on. You can have it default to turn off after 15 seconds or just have it off all the time. Beep is obviously sounds if you want it to emit a sound when it's ready. The remote ready indicator is just a indicator on either the front or back of the flash if you want to make sure that you know that your remote is active. So for sensor format, you can choose between 35mm auto, which is going to be the crop sensor, or you can choose custom. If you choose custom format, then the next option is custom sensor format, where you can enter the multiplier that you want. Standby and remote standby let you modify the standby periods of the flashes, and you can also change the auto power off to be 1 hour or 8 hours. And that's it for the custom functions of the Fujifilm EFX500. Another thing people were asking me about the Fuji EFX500 is the high-speed sync. The high-speed sync, while it works great, all the way up to 1/8,000th of a second with no black bars or banding of any issues, there is one major issue, and that is it loses a ton of light. When I've tested other speedlights, you tend to lose between 1 to 1.5 stops of light. This thing loses like 2.5 to 3 stops of light just by flipping into high-speed sync. So its flash pulse is not very efficient. Between it putting out only 65% of the light that other speed lights do, as well as losing 2.5 to 3 stops in high speed sync, in terms of overpowering the sun with soft light, you know, these in some type of softbox, that's not happening. I don't even think that's happening with 3 of them. But basically, your options for high speed sync using this outdoors are just going to be very, very slim. You're going to have to use these as a harsh source in order to get any type of output out of them to compete outdoors. That's kind of a bummer, but it is a little light, so you can't really expect much. So I think that the release of the Fujifilm EFX500 is really great for the brand because we didn't really have many other great options. However, I think it's pretty plagued, and for the price, it's not a good deal. First off, a lack of radio technology between these flashes is terrible. Relying on optical line of sight between the speedlights in order to have remote capabilities is just awful. If you want to have any type of modifier, you're going to have to make sure that this is twisted. You're going to be having a tough time outdoors in bright conditions, whether it's going to be sensing the light. I just don't think it's a good system. We need radio in these things. Radio has been built into other speedlights for over 2 years now, like the Canon 600s. And for this not to have them when it's super stable and the technology that's just necessary at this point, that's really a pitfall. I think that the autofocus assist lamp being LED is just nowhere near as useful as an autofocus grid that you would find on another body. It's far too distracting and annoying to use. And it doesn't have the same illumination properties that are going to help you in the autofocus like you would get on another type of DSLR. Its power output is respectable, but it's certainly no powerhouse. You're going to have a tough time using this as a soft light source. You're pretty much only going to be using it as a very directional hard source, at least outdoors. Indoors, it definitely has the power to illuminate, even bounce really well. Its recycle speed is definitely not tremendous, but it's pretty respectable considering the size of the unit and the power that it puts out. If you're like me and you've used something like the Zoom R2 lithium-ion based speedlight where you're getting full power, more full power than you are with this at 2 seconds, this is going to seem very slow to use. So they filled a huge gap in their line by releasing the EFX500, and it is stable and well made. However, there's plenty of room for improvement, and at $450 they could have done a lot better. That's all my thoughts. I hope this answered any questions that you guys have. If you came up with any new questions, please let me know in the comments and I will respond. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope it helped you out. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more, and comment with any questions. Follow me on Snapchat for behind the scenes, Twitter for deals on photography gear, and Instagram to see my work. Lastly, I have a Facebook group as a discussion forum which is linked in the description. Take it easy, YouTube.